The awakening. Ever since I can remember, I was never concerned with what others would think about my ideas, my projects, my abilities, my companions, my job, and anything else that would be listed under the category of what I felt was necessary for me to express my life. Quite simply and forcefully, because it is my life. So where do I begin this lengthy chapter of my life that must be documented? I could start at the beginning of my strange involvements, except for the fact that there were paranormal and supernatural experiences going on at this particular time in my life before I was aware that there was even a definition for such things, at least for the things I was experiencing. It seems these experiences would be better placed as flashbacks for the reader to better understand the meaning behind each of those specific experiences. If I were to start from the beginning, I would be writing about how I always had my nose in some conspiracy and that at this specific time, around late 2014, there was nothing to be found, at least that I hadn't already explored before my eyes were truly opened in early 2015. I was tired of searching, and even when I did, I was always coming up with nothing. I have studied unidentified flying objects my whole life and never actually seen one. Oh, I looked up into the night sky enough times to say I saw some light move from here to there and then disappear, and granted, they were unidentified, but to have seen an actual flying disc? No, I can't say that I have. The boredom of not researching paranormal experiences was bugging me. Sure, I was distracting myself with movies, social media, and other computer outlets, but this was becoming more and more mundane by the day. There had to be something new to discover. I started with weather patterns and ended up with volcanoes. I watched Yosemite volcano videos on YouTube for over a week as they spoke of one going off any day in February of 2015. I was content with the volcano information, so I pushed on. Every once in a while, my eye would catch an EMP fear-mongering video or something even more strange on the suggestion side of the YouTube page. I ignored those feeds for as long as I could. I kept coming across some nonsense about Mother Earth being flat. My thoughts on it at the time were something along the lines of, oh my, how are people allowed to record and post such rubbish? The significance of watching the volcano videos will be better understood after other events and personal experiences are explained. At the time, I did not realize that watching volcano videos would actually have some part of a future theory based on some of the dealings I was experiencing. It was these experiences that I have had since 2015 that blew my mind, or more correctly, seriously lifted the veil. At that time, I was being exposed to these paranormal supernatural experiences, and I didn't know it. The one phenomenon that took place with me that also went commercial, hitting the internet on YouTube, Reddit, and other media outlets, was the Mandela effect. Please understand that there are many theories as to what it is and what is causing it. And if you do any engine search, most of the first 20 or so suggestions will steer you in the direction that the Mandela effect is just a bunch of people misremembering stuff. They blow it off as some crackpot conspiracy. Yet with the experiences that took place in my life, I can say for certain that it is not some conspiracy. It is a real thing, and I have hypothesized on a few theories. As for having a straightforward answer, my suggestion would be to steer clear of anyone claiming to know exactly what the Mandela effect is. I only say this because there are so many things taking place at this time in this history, and so many other theories could be placed inside one another, that it is too complex to say one way or another. Suffice it to say that there are many people who claim history is different than they recall. People are noticing changes with geography, products, and pop culture. And it is not that the idea that these things are changing that is the freaky part. It is that these things have always been the way they are now. Because of the experiences I have had and what it seems may be taking place, by my definition, it is my opinion that it is absolutely possible for one person to experience a Mandela effect. This is derived from the idea that there are infinite timelines. But I am repeating myself and getting ahead of myself. Okay, take a breath. For a few months, I have had the unnerving experience of being the only person who remembered the Big Dipper and Little Dipper being connected. It took almost half a year before someone could confirm my memory by having the same memory about the Dippers. Of course, that was with the help of my YouTube channel. Yet personal Mandela effects are far and few between, only because they are not normally recognized. How many times would you say you blew something off because it just made no sense at all? Have you ever misplaced your keys knowing for sure where you placed them? Most people aren't mentally prepared to come out and start telling everyone that they noticed changes in history that cannot be explained. And rightly so, as any authoritative figure would recommend medication. Time travel, merging Earths, and shifting consciousness are just but a few of the more known theories. Because of my many experiences, I have theorized that we are the dimensional beings we have been looking for. To be more precise, we are the multidimensional beings, and our dominant consciousness is shifting through infinite timelines, and that it is more than likely our natural state of being. So, when people notice lyrics in an old song have changed or a product that is spelled differently than they recall, all they are seeing is what it has always been in that particular timeline. Nothing is changing. Nothing has changed except for you. Seeing a Mandela effect becomes nothing more than a signal, message, or signpost that your consciousness has shifted into another adjacent timeline. I would hypothesize that the greater or more obvious the change is would mean there was a bigger gap in between in said timelines. Dominant consciousness? It seems to be a term I have coined meaning where your present consciousness resides. If the theory stands correct, or even close to correct, then there are many adjacent timelines branching off every nanosecond, or at least every time a human being makes a decision or choice. Your physical body interacts with other people on every timeline that you exist in. But where you are conscious is where your dominant consciousness resides, as the others will only become apparent if you happen to shift into one of those other timelines. It may even be that these said timelines only exist when they are needed, called upon, or in use. When I say dominant consciousness, I mean where your consciousness is in relation to all the other timelines. You may exist in one or all or just some timelines, but where you are focused and conscious is your dominant consciousness. Your dominant consciousness is all you ever need to concern yourself with. I also feel that it is very plausible that we will eventually be dominantly consciousness in more than one timeline and be able to consciously go back and forth through time. Although this idea would be advanced, the reason for it may help other areas of interest. One reason I feel we may be able to exist in more than one timeline comes from people having dual memories. For instance, some people have reported recalling two distinct different events taking place in their life when only one of those memories is possible. A little less intense experience might be noticing words in a song changed. The Beatles come to mind. The first line in the song, with a little help from my friend, states, "What would you do or think if I sang out of tune?" Some people recall both do and think. I have been writing a documentary since 2001 about the mystery surrounding the life and death of Paul McCartney. This documentary theorizes that Paul died long before the myth suggests. To purposely digress, I halted the Paul McCartney project after experiencing the Mandela effect, especially with people coming back from the dead. It seemed to me it was going to be a lot easier to replace Paul knowing how to shift in and out of other timelines. I went to this document for reference as soon as I heard about the possible Beatles Mandela effect. The information itself was placed on a USB chip in June of 2015, just before my computer crashed. As a matter of fact, the computer crashed and I did not have the information saved. At this time, I had nothing backed up. I did everything I could to get that computer running again. After about 5 minutes, I got it started with no screen. Then for no reason, somehow, some way, the screen came up and I had complete access for about 2 minutes, and that's all I needed. The information was saved and the computer was trashed. The information was stored on the USB chip, had the word think, not do. This is what is considered a dual memory. As much time as I've spent listening to the Beatles, I am surprised that I do not have a definite answer for this one. But I feel when someone is close to a Mandela effect topic, they themselves do not see the change. I sing think, but everyone I ask to sing or say the first line with a little help from my friends, they reply with do. Infinite timelines and infinite dimensions make this very possible. This dual memory idea comes out clear when asking someone what color the yield sign is. Well, over 85% of the people I ask answer yellow and are sure, and then some get that look on their face, and with a question in their answer, they reply, wait, red? Back in 2017, when I looked this up, I discovered that the yield sign hasn't been yellow since 1972, and that information has changed a couple of times since as well. Also, many people remember both Berenstain and Berenstein Bears. Some people remember Jif and Jiffy on the shelf at the same time, myself being one of them, while others are sure that Jiffy turned into Jif, and some even say it used to be spelled Jif with two F's. Some people recall Curious George having a tail, while others say he never had a tail. Infinite timelines, maybe? If true, then the idea that there are infinite timelines becomes a very conceivable option. And wherever you are conscious and focused is where your dominant consciousness resides. Now let's be sensible. All we should ever be concerned with is where we are conscious, right? Now consider the idea that you can shift your dominant consciousness wherever you like. The idea about being able to go back and forth through time by means of our dominant consciousness stems from a few of the experiences that took place mainly when I moved to Mississippi. After moving back to Colorado, there was one event that took place that struck me as a possible time phenomenon. I was enjoying a day in the hot springs when myself and another gentleman I just met named Mark started conversing. He had a medium-length white beard and looked as though he was very healthy for being in his early 70s. When I felt that the time was right, I started with the Mandela effect questions. He had a look on his face I hadn't ever seen while asking these questions. Then he seemed to get serious. He just listened as I went on about some other non-commercial experience I had. I mentioned death being a possible catalyst for seeing the Mandela effects. It went on for a good half hour until he started to vacate the pool and, as an afterthought, asking me my last name. I told him, and then explained that Suso was my YouTube channel and that it was part of my last name. Then something came over me. I felt as though I should ask him what his last name was. So I did. Not a word was spoken after he answered me. I stared at him and he stared back with a very slight grin on his face, one of knowing. He simply stated for me to keep doing what I was doing, and that his last name was Twain. Now, when I said that shifting our consciousness through timelines may be our natural state of being, what I mean to say is that every nanosecond we are shifting into another direct adjacent timeline. That is how we create motion and time. Each timeline consists of multiple parallel realities within that specific timeline's parameters. I am speculating that most of the time we stay within our foremost timeline, or at least we used to. When we notice a change that cannot be explained, we have jumped to an adjacent timeline consisting of different parameters. Although I feel that shifting timelines is our natural way of existing, it has been suggested that these shifts are being purposely done on a mass scale, what I like to call a forced mass shift. But who is doing it and why? Well, CERN has come up in the D-Wave computer. Some say the Illuminati or the governments that control the world. Some say it's the devil and others say it's God. Why is really anyone's guess. Nefarious reasons, evolutionary reasons, maybe to keep control, or maybe it's just natural. These questions become obsolete when you start to realize you can manipulate or use this information to shift your consciousness into a timeline more to your liking. But I am getting way ahead of myself. I also feel there could be what might be referred to as a natural mass shift. This would be explained as a natural disaster or some climatic tragedy that caused many deaths, like a volcano eruption maybe. Please understand that this is all theory, but more accurately, these are my hypotheses based on the experiences that took place in my life. Not just the experiences by themselves, but also the way I interpreted those experiences. So it is also important to understand that these experiences were for me and that someone else may have interpreted these experiences differently. Hypothesis, theory, and speculation can all be true from your perspective. These are my truths and my beliefs, which constantly shift and change. If it were not for these events that took place in my life, I would not understand that truth and beliefs change. This is not something that came to me in a dream or that I meditated on or something I picked up off of other people. The Mandela effect is most definitely real to me. It is just one of the many supernatural events that took place in my life starting in 2015 that had me looking at the world differently. Yet it was not the Mandela effect alone which changed my perception of reality. It was going to take a greater event to convince me that everything we have been taught is and has been a lie, even though that may only be the case on these relevant timelines. As far as looking at my background for this presentation, all you really need to know is that I was always on the lookout for the unknown or esoteric. I studied everything from different religions to government conspiracies. In the 1980s and through the 1990s, I worked in Trump Plaza Casino in Atlantic City, where myself and four others would sit and discuss all kinds of conspiracies. We delved into esoteric information and supposedly top secret information with material from people like Vladimir Valerian and his book Matrix 2, or William Cooper's Behold a Pale Horse. We always talked about how physical reality was not real, how our real selves were in spirit. It did not take long for me to latch on to the idea that death was one of the biggest illusions. We don't die. Of course, I assumed we would shed the physical body and move on to a lighter, less dense body. Why do I say assumed? To be honest, when I started to feel that death was not real, I didn't mean it to be literal. I didn't mean that the body I resided in would go on forever. I felt that I would always know myself as I am on some level, although that idea has been ripped away. On one specific memorable day in the spring of 2015, my ideas, perception, and thoughts about death seriously changed.